Hi everyone. First off, I want to thank you all so much for coming. I know it's a Wednesday night and a lot of you have assignments and exams probably due tonight or tomorrow. So thank you so much for coming. So we're going to be discussing redesigning communication. And I wanted to start off this discussion with a bang. So let's talk about the NFL for a second. So as you guys may or may not have heard, Colin Kaepernick started a movement within the players to kneel during the anthem because he felt that there was a lot of injustice going on in the world and that to just stand up for the flag was not respecting the injustice that is going on in the country and around the world. So this is an extreme case of communication right here. So we have two sides. One side feels that a tradition is being disrespected. To not stand up during the flag is disrespecting our soldiers and all that they have done for our country. But then the other side feels that an injustice is being ignored, that thousands of people have been killed wrongly by police and they're not getting the representation that they deserve in this dialogue. So we're going to scale down, and because that's such a complex issue that can't be solved within a 10-minute discussion, we're going to try and consider how can we improve how we communicate with each other? How can I make it so that I make my life easier and the other person in this dialogue's life easier as well? So what exactly is design thinking? So design thinking is a framework that designers use to try and solve problems. But I personally think that it can be applicable to any situation and to anyone. So the design process is 5 steps. The first is discovery. The second is research. The third is ideation. The fourth is prototyping, and the fifth and most important step, I think, is evaluation. We're going to go through all 5 steps today so that we can improve how we communicate with each other. So we've already kind of done the first step, which is discovery, and what we're going to do now is just reframe the problem. So one way that you can do this is turn a problem like that people can't communicate properly with each other into a how might we situation so that we can start solving that problem. So how might we, as students, as people starting to go into the workforce, use design thinking to help create positive environments for thoughtful interpersonal communication? So let's take a bit of a closer look. Now we're into the second stage, which is research. So let's first ask ourselves, why are environments that we participate in every day, such as school or the workplace, why are they so stress-inducing? And the answer isn't simple, just like most problems. It could be multiple factors. Maybe you have a really petty boss. Maybe you have a lot of assignments that you're dealing with. Maybe you're having a relationship problem, and because of that, that's just affecting every environment that you're in. But the core idea that I want to focus on is that it narrows down to us and other people not being able to communicate our feelings, how we feel internally, in a thoughtful way. So now we're on the third stage, which is ideation. This is the fun part where we get to come up with really, really crazy ideas of how can we change this? How can we make environments more safe for people to be able to communicate with each other? So you can come up with crazy ideas like a neural network that lets us read each other's minds. Or like, what if we had a scream room where, like, in every building you could go and scream and then it would turn that scream into like a dubstep song or something like that? Or you could get free brownies every time you were able to communicate properly how you were feeling to another person. Or even you could have an hour of mandatory therapy where you have to hash out your feelings, right? And these ideas, while a lot of fun to entertain, aren't exactly feasible. And feasibility is something you'll hear a lot in design. Is it possible? Is it feasible? So how might we model this, right? So this is stage 4, this is prototyping, this is actually trying to consolidate all of our lovely ideas that we just came up with and try to build a first draft of a product, right? So what if the solution was, how about every day you just set aside an hour of your time out of a 24-hour day to learn how to articulate your emotions clearly. You can read about it, you can study it, you can watch how other people do it, and wind down, find ways to relax, and that's going to be subjective to each person. And then also teaching yourself to switch your paradigm, because just like with the NFL, you have two sides that are very different. You have to understand the other perspective, that other paradigm, in order to start moving towards better communication. And most importantly, how might we improve this? So, just like technology, the way we communicate with each other is changing every day. We can't just ask, how are you, to each other every day. It's got to become iterative. It's got to become more specific. How are you might turn into, how was that exam you took? Or how's your relationship doing? Or how is your boss? Is he still petty? And this is the most important step, because the first draft of a product is never the final product, right? We have to keep changing the product, and we have to change our mindset in order to get to that stage of iteration. Like, how can I make my communication better every single day? So to start the discussion, I wanted to ask, how might you guys approach improving interpersonal communication? Go ahead.
I would try to talk about other people less, or try to talk about myself less and other people more.
Being mindful of the words that you say and how they make other people feel new.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm cheating because I'm taking a design making class on campus, but I forget exactly what it's called. It's like the third rule or something, but you always look to someone, and especially because the class emphasizes how you might strike up a conversation with someone you don't know, is looking for something you might have in common, or starting with oh hey, your shoes are really cool, that one connection, and building from there.
Right, it's that's almost like your first draft, right? You've got that one point, that one sticking point, and then you just keep building from there, and you keep improving it. And, that's how a lot of people become friends or get into relationships, right? So, it's that one thing. I guess the next question is, so what are some of the other factors that you guys feel cause environments to be stressful? I know I listed a few, but what are some of the things that maybe you guys are going through that you feel cause you a lot of stress?
I think an easy one for a lot of us that we're always on, from when we first wake up, texts, emails, groupies for group projects, Elms notifications. It is literally endless until and that for me is a lot when you're giving information into your brain for 12 hours a day. It's stressful.
Yeah, definitely. It's a information overload almost constantly every day. I don't even like going on Twitter anymore because it's just more awful news. So I definitely understand that. So what are some of the ways that you guys might try to use design thinking in your own processes or your own projects right now?
I feel one important thing that's in the design thinking process that we don't think about day to day is getting feedback from others, and just kind of hitting other people up to see what their opinions on something are, and just trying to help them.
Yeah, definitely. Evaluation is like, I feel like it's the most important aspect of design thinking, getting that feedback.
Prioritizing?
What do you mean?
Well, since we're so overwhelmed, which is also a stressful, I guess, factor. So being overwhelmed, looking at things and then, kind of outlining and prioritizing what needs to be done.
Yeah, definitely.
I think stopping and thinking about the little things too can be a really important aspect of especially like discovering a small problem and creating a solution that can solve that problem. That can make you feel so much better. Like sometimes it's overwhelming thinking about the big picture and like how you could, change an entire system, whereas if you hone in on one specific thing and try to focus on that, you could use these steps to even just improve one little aspect.
Yeah, right. And that kind of goes back to like why I brought up the issue with the NFL, right? That's such a big issue, and like I would love to talk about it, right? But I can't solve that problem, realistically speaking, in a 10-minute conversation, right? But if I could help everybody just like maybe with a smaller problem, then that's a start. And I think it is like the little steps that you take that can really propel change.
I think you could also use this framework to think about like how you do things. So like, figure out like, oh, did working on all my homework like in a big block today, was that less stressful than like doing it a little bit over time, or did that just, condense it and was actually better? Right? Just like making sure to sort of evaluate what the different ways you do things that work better or worse.
All right, I guess that concludes my portion of the discussion for using design thinking. Helen, do you want to take it
Do
away?
any of you have any questions for Sana about how she got into design thinking, or?
How did you get into design?
Nailed it.
That's such an original question. It's a really long story, but I guess the short version is I've always loved design, I've always loved drawing. Like ever since I could pick up a pencil, I could draw. And as I grew up, I thought like, oh, I want to be a graphic designer. Like that's the natural course of progression, right? And I do love graphic design. I still do graphic design, but I also really like the idea of using this visual medium to kind of help people solve problems. So I thought this was like a really good combination of my interests.
I have a question, kind of leads into that. Are there any like real world examples of you using design thinking to help you solve like problems in your life or work or whatever?
That's a great question. I guess, well, let's see. Every summer, I try to pick up a new skill. Even if I'm not if I don't think I'll be good at it at all, I try to pick up something that I've never done before. And I guess that's kind of like a combination of like ideation, prototyping, and evaluation. It'll be
So
like,
is that how you approach the learning new stuff?
yeah, I figure out what I want to do. I do my research. For example, last year, my cousin got married, so I had to learn how to dance, which I had never done before. So I did my research on how to do like traditional Indian Pakistani dances. I started coming up with ideas of what I was gonna do, and then, I started dancing, and the first prototype was obviously not very great because my connection to gravity is terrible. But now it's decent, and I still try to dance every now and then. But yeah, I think that would be like an example of me using it every day.
This is in relation to the PowerPoint. How do you think your college or NFL example actually related to? Like, do you think that a design method can actually solve the NFL problem in the future?
I think it could, but it would definitely take a long time just because it is like its centrality, it's a miscommunication issue. So it would, I think a lot of the beginning stages would have to be like just setting up environments for people to be able to listen to each other talk and see both sides. Awesome. Any more questions? Awesome.
Thank you so much, Hannah.